season starts here, the Vancouver Boat Show.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the VIBS. I wish my stocks were performing like the attendance number in this room. This is great and it keeps growing. So good to have you all here. If you experience any technical difficulties, please contact me, your moderator, in the chat window, and I'll help you in any way that I can. So in the meantime, while the presentation is going, if you think of any questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A window, and we'll read them out after the presentation. So I think we're good to go. It's a great pleasure to present Lynn Picard and Jim Burgoyne with Cruising Puget Sound, Worth Waiting For. And we're just opening the audio. Here we go.
Somehow we've gotten off the first screen and we can't seem to use our clicker to move. There we go. We're going, but we can't go back. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay.
All right. Great.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us. I'm Lynn, and this is Jim, and we write 6 cruising guides to the Salish Sea, and we've just introduced our newest guide to the west coast of Vancouver Island. So when we first did this presentation on Cruising Puget Sound was last year at the boat show, and it was titled Cruising Puget Sound, What Are You Waiting For? But of course now we all are waiting for the same thing, the border to open, and so now it's Cruising Puget Sound, Worth Waiting For. So the idea for this presentation came to us after being asked all the time by Canadian boaters why anybody would want to cruise in Puget Sound. It's just urban sprawl and fenced off beaches and factories.
And everyone loves cruising to remote places, but the pursuit of wilderness is not the reason you would cruise Puget Sound. That doesn't mean there aren't lovely parks with some amazing hiking trails and lots of wildlife, but there's nothing off-grid about it. It's not the Broughtons or the west coast of Vancouver Island. I've never cruised the canals of Europe, but maybe the experience is something like that.
It's what I call easy cruising. Things are just easy. I don't have to plan for 2 weeks of meals and try and get everything onto the boat. I can have a steak with lovely fresh vegetables from the farmer's market and deli cheese and locally made crackers washed down by local craft beer. So for me, it's an opportunity to have a bit of a foodie experience, which is a great holiday. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Broughtons, I love Desolation Sound, but today I'm making a case for a different kind of cruising holiday. This is the farmer's market in Olympia, which is just minutes from the dock. Okay, so what is exactly considered Puget Sound? At the top of the map, you can see Anacortes, which is just over 100 miles from Olympia, way down in the south there as the crow flies. And about 17,000 years ago, a massive glacier bulldozed its way south, and it was so thick and deep that it almost covered the Cascadia and the Olympic Mountains on either side. And underneath was gravel and rocks that ground the terrain below. So the glacier crept down as far as Olympia before it surrendered to the big thaw. And as it retreated, the ground underneath slowly rebounded, rising hundreds of feet, which is why the shoreline is mostly sand and mud.
When we first thought about doing this talk, we planned to suggest routes you could take if you had 2, 3, or 4 weeks of holidays, but we found we just couldn't sum things up like that. It depends on your idea of a holiday. Do you like cities? Do you stay in marinas? Do you prefer to anchor? You can spend weeks in the Sound and spend little money, or you can spend a hell of a lot. We'll just take you to some places that we like and hope it answers some of your questions along the way. The first thing you have to do is clear customs. That intimidates some boaters. It depends where you're coming from, but for most of us, the easiest places to check in are Friday Harbor or Rush Harbor, or maybe Point Roberts Marina near Victoria. Vancouver, excuse me, near Vancouver. Closer to Puget Sound are the ports of entry at Anacortes and Port Townsend. We have found Rush Harbor to be crazy busy on Canadian long weekends, and at that time, Friday Harbor is preferable. This is the Camp Sant Marina at Anacortes. Different U.S. Customs docks have different procedures. Typically, you tie up and everyone but the captain remains on board. The captain takes all boat and crew papers to a customs phone or office to report in. If it's your first visit of the year, you'll pay $19 for a cruising license that is good for the calendar year. And if you and anyone else on board has a Nexus card, you can always call in after just as you're entering the United States, and it makes things much easier.
Okay, so this brings us to poop. So all of Puget Sound and the San Juan Islands, right up to the Canadian border, is a no discharge zone. So if you don't have a composting toilet, you've got to have a holding tank or at least a porta potty. I don't think that this would pass inspection. And this map shows the no discharge zone in pink. But free and easy to use pump outs are available at all the marinas and all the city and park docks. But you also have to disable your ability to flush overboard and then prove that you have done so if asked by authorities. So there's a website called pumpoutwashington.org that lists the 4 ways to prove that you cannot pump overboard. And they aren't complicated.
So let's cruise down into the Sound. This is the lighthouse at Point Wilson near Port Townsend. It's at the entrance to Admiralty Inlet, which is likely to be your first landfall if sailing from Vancouver Island. It's a great area with lots of sheltered anchorages. This is looking north to Point Wilson and beyond to the San Juan Islands. Here is also Fort Worden, built in 1902 to protect Puget Sound from invasion by sea. It's now a park with mooring buoys across the bay. And here we are in a mooring ball just south of the wharf. In Puget Sound, there are lots of marine buoys or marine parks with mooring buoys, floats, and docks. Buoys cost $15 a night for boats up to 45 feet. If you're planning to spend any time down there, purchase a season pass at a cost of about $5 a foot. In our case, it paid for itself in 14 nights. You can buy a pass online and have it sent to you before leaving. This anchorage, however, can get very rolly from passing freighters and ferries, so don't leave fine glassware out on the salon table.
Do we have any fine glassware?
No, fine plastic. There's easy bus access into Port Townsend, or it can be walked in less than an hour if that's your thing. I didn't do such a good job here of timing our departure from this dinghy dock. I think we went for ice cream to wait out the tide.
We did.
Yeah.
And Port Townsend is a lovely town with an old-time nautical feel. There's lots of moorage with 2 large marinas at either end of the city, and then the historic Wharf Street linking them together. And there's also several public docks you can tie up at and places that you can anchor with good holding. Provisioning is great in town. There's supermarkets and Saturday farmers market. So just across from Port Townsend is Fort Flagler State Park, which has good anchorage and buoys and a small park dock. And it showcases preserved gun batteries. There's a military hospital, as well as restored homes of officers. And there's about a dozen walking trails in the park with beautiful views across to the Olympic and Cascade Mountains.
And here we are at the south end of Port Townsend Bay, and where you find Port Hadlock. The marina here has little transient moorage, but there is a good anchorage nearby and a public dock with trails ashore and some traditional marine businesses that are fun to explore. And nearby is the Port Townsend Channel. You can take it to the southern reaches of Admiralty Inlet. If your vertical clearance exceeds 18 meters though, depending on the tide, you'll likely have to go around.
And it's not that far to Port Ludlow, where the marina there is somewhat famous for holding group events like rendezvous for boat makers and yacht clubs. It's also an excellent anchorage with over 20 miles of hiking trails in the area. And for golfers who stay at the marina, they'll appreciate the free shuttle bus to the golf club. So if you do like to golf, there's lots of marinas in Puget Sound that offer shuttles to nearby courses.
And there I am, climbing the mast on a calm day. We started installing mast steps at home in Victoria. We ran out of time, so we took the project with us. As Lynn was saying, Puget Sound is easy. If you have boat projects, take them with you. Do them when you have time.
And who doesn't have boat projects?
That's right. And that goes for electrical work too. We had a mess of rewiring to do. The beauty of Puget Sound is the availability of parts. And even parts I never knew we'd need
Yeah.
were never far away.
I wish that I'd taken a shot of what it looks like now. It's beautiful with our new panel. Okay, so heading south from Port Ludlow, Mount Rainier becomes a majestic presence as you pass Point No Point, which takes us to Kingston, about halfway between Port Ludlow and Poulsbo. It's a small town that gets very busy every hour or so with the arrival of the ferry to and from Edmonds.
Kingston has some free mooring buoys next to the ferry dock. I spent a couple of nights alone here a few years ago. It's a lovely place, very relaxed, so I insisted we stop here on our last trip down. Well, the view was nice, but it was miserable with night winds and ship wake, and I'm not sure Lynn has forgiven me since
It's a
that.
good thing they were free.
Yeah, that's right. But it's convenient because it does break up a pretty long stretch of coastline, and you can opt for the protected marina. They had electric cars that were free to use for provisioning in town. Apparently COVID ended that, but hopefully the service will resume after the pandemic. And moving south, across from Seattle is Bainbridge Island. The waterways behind Bainbridge Island are collectively known as Port Orchard. This includes to the north Liberty Bay and the city of Poulsbo.
Which is a charming town with a Scandinavian flair, and it's I think it's known as Little Norway. And it's a very walkable town with art galleries and museums, bakery, there's a chandlery, and I think 5 craft breweries. So many cruisers, but not us, measure an anchorage by the number of beer and craft beer and ciders that are on tap locally. So a 120-year-old church overlooks this very picturesque waterfront. And here we are, anchored off the marina, and we were entertained daily by these resident seals. So the second Saturday of the month, at least pre-COVID, they have a gallery hop. You can stroll down the streets and meet with the artists in their galleries.
And just south of Poulsbo, in the channel out of Liberty Bay, is Keyport, home to a small marina with transient docks and a naval station where they design and build undersea weapons. There's an undersea museum here that's pretty interesting as well. And just south of Keyport is an area about 3 miles long that is off limits to pleasure boats when the Navy is playing target practice under the water. You can pass by Bainbridge Island and Port Orchard in a couple hours, or spend weeks here. There's much to explore and so many anchorages. And in case you're wondering what all the squares are on our chartlets, they're taken from pages in our guides. The squares and labels are actually buttons and links to other pages.
So I'm going to play a short video that explains how they work, and then you'll see what they're all about. It's not the Puget Sound guide, it's the new guide we have to the west coast of the island, but you'll get the idea. I have to talk fast, so I actually taped it too fast. So, okay, when you hit the text or the box, it takes you to that location. And then you can zoom in, see what's on shore, trailhead, that kind of thing. There's the information about the dock or the mooring buoys in this case. That's the main menu button. Takes you to the front page. You can change sections. So there's section E, Puget Sound. You want to see what's at Walters Cove. There's what's on shore, the docks. And then that icon takes you back to the beginning of the section. So back to section E. You can look at another anchorage, Dixie Cove. You can also scroll through them. And again, that's the main menu, which also has links to things like wind and weather, provisioning, tides and currents. So that's basically how they work. Okay, so let's skip down to Sinclair Inlet and the communities of Bremerton and Port Orchard. They sit on opposite sides of the inlet, and they're both pleasant places to wander around, and both also have interesting museums. So this is downtown Port Orchard, and this is part of a waterfront walk in Bremerton, where there's a Free Navy Museum that focuses on the region's naval history and what it's like to live on aircraft carriers and submarines. Big attraction is also the USS Turner Joy, which is being converted into yet another museum.
And back out in the main sound is Blake Island. It's a lovely park, almost 500 acres in size, across from Seattle. And the entire island is parkland surrounded by 20 marine buoys with transient marina off the park village. There's lovely beaches and miles of walking trails, making it a really popular spot.
Okay, so we'll move now to Eagle Harbor on the eastern shore of Bainbridge Island, which is another favorite anchorage of ours. This is the view from our kayak looking out over the anchorage. And there's also 2 marinas and a public dock that takes visiting boats. So we generally end up spending way more time here than planned, like sometimes weeks. There's a really great city pool. We swim laps, so we like that. And you go for a hot tub and have long, hot, untimed showers. There's also a movie theater. There's a library with Wi-Fi, a supermarket, chandlery, place to get ice cream. And then there's the ferry that leaves every hour for the trip over to Seattle, which is great. And this is the view of Seattle from the anchorage. So at night, that's really a lovely view. And yes, we were there, the Pickleball Founders Tournament in 2019.
It's an important slide.
He wanted to take it out. So little known fact, back in 1965, 3 young fathers invented the sport of pickleball on Bainbridge Island. And on the south shore, there's a Japanese exclusion memorial, which was built to remember the 227 Japanese who were forcibly displaced from the island during World War II. Kind of a moving spot. So this was a close encounter that I had with a seal. He was pretty curious, and he followed me along for quite a while I was rowing. And I took my backpack off and got my phone out to take pictures, and he became interested in my oar, swatting at it several times and sort of chasing it and playing with it while I paddled. And then he started taking hunks out of it. So then I got a little nervous because he had huge teeth and claws, and when he jumps into the dinghy, I'm literally sunk. Okay, so this is Winslow Wharf in Eagle Harbor. There's a chandlery and a restaurant bar. It's very, very pretty.
And the ferry over to Seattle from Bainbridge Island is an easy way to visit the big city and avoid the expense of a marina stay there. This photo was taken in the Fremont area of Seattle, which has a funky atmosphere with lots of fun shops and restaurants. And fishery supply is also in Fremont if you're looking for a boat bit to fix or replace something.
We're there a lot.
Yeah, we're there. There a lot. While here and elsewhere in the Sound, we used Uber. I suppose most people know this, but for Uber and other services that run off apps, you'll want cell service. If you don't want to pay for roaming, you can buy US SIM cards online or from supermarkets or Walmarts or wherever. Unlimited data and minutes starts at about $50 a month.
Yeah,
they
it was
pay.
worth having.
Yeah.
So Ballard is another fun part of Seattle. After a long day, walking around, shopping, exploring, you can get some excellent northern Thai food or spicy Mexican. And, that's not happening when you feel like it in the Broughtons, right? And neither is a pint of local craft beer and a game of Yahtzee in a Viking tavern.
Mm.
We've spent a lot of time wandering around Ballard, and including this massive consignment store, which is fascinating. So I wanted to buy that rhinoceros head and put it on the bow of the boat, but Jim said no.
Vetoed it. Another site in Ballard, especially for boaters, is the Chittenden locks, also known as the Ballard locks. They bring boats up from Puget Sound to the freshwater canal that leads inland to Lake Union and Lake Washington. And if you're planning to take your boat up through the locks, which we highly recommend, it's a good place to spend a couple hours visiting the locks by land, so you can watch boats go through and see how it works. You can pick up a boater's brochure and attend a how-to seminar in their little workshop there, and it will ease any concerns you might have had. And this map shows the ship canal from Puget Sound through the locks and into the inland lakes. And here we are arriving at the locks by boat. There are two locks, one small and one large, and you might be directed to either one. Traffic lights and loudspeakers control the flow of boats. Just do as you're told. Information on the gear you need for either lock, such as ropes and fenders, is available online from cruising guides or from the material you picked up at the visitor center. In this photo, we're in the small lock tied to the wall, waiting for the lock to fill. And presto, now we're preparing to exit into the lakes. The boats in the distance are waiting their turn. Strong currents enter the lock when the gates open, so don't untie until you're told to do so. It's an adventure and it's fun, even with an audience.
So from the locks, you enter the Lake Washington Ship Canal and pass under some fixed and lifting bridges on the way into the lakes. So the vertical clearance of each bridge is on government charts. So you just have to know the distance from the water line to the highest point on your boat, such as the top of your VHF antenna. And this is a view of the canal from a footpath along it that we walked while we were in Ballard. The bridges are closed during rush hours, but you request an opening outside of those times by signaling with your horn. And along the canal, there's float homes. And once you get under that bridge, you're really in the heart of downtown Seattle.
And this is a stock photo of South Lake Union, which is very much worth a visit. There's usually a lot of stuff happening along the water here. It's the home of the Center for Wooden Boats. It's also a bit of a techie district with blocks of office buildings for Google and Amazon. There's daytime moorage at several public docks and along a wall, which you can tie to overnight. But for most of us, it's on to Lake Washington, where there's some really nice anchorages and marine parks, as well as some pleasant marinas to go to. One of our favorite destinations is Kirkland on the northeast shore of the lake. The marina here is well kept, and it's a great community for boaters to explore on foot.
And lift some weights, I think.
The new floating bridge across Lake Washington allows boaters with masts as high as 70 feet to pass under and visit the south half of the lake. And a splendid anchorage is at Andrews Bay. If you've never seen 20 or 30 boats rafted together, it's a pretty common sight here, though it's seldom overrun with overnighters. The bay has an adjoining park with trails and play areas for kids. Bus service nearby will take you quickly into downtown Seattle. One thing we really enjoy here is swimming off the boat. The lake water is much warmer.
And of course, there are also several great marinas in Seattle. This is the Elliott Bay Marina, where we stayed for a few days this summer. The one drawback is its location. It's a bit removed from downtown Seattle. However, it's only a 20-minute walk to a grocery store and the bus stop that will take you into town. And there's also always Uber. So we both really enjoy the heat. And it was nice to have some while we were in Seattle. You don't think it's ever been that warm in Desolation Sound.
Don't diss Desolation Sound. And this is an example of local weather. This cloud hung over Seattle's downtown skyline one morning as we set off from Eagle Harbor. I think we should touch on weather a bit. You can get marine forecasts two ways. The forecasts on the VHF weather channels are, like in Canada, updated 4 times a day. If you have cell or Wi-Fi, there's a web page with the same marine forecast. The beauty of the website is the forecast is instantly there. On the radio, it can be a long wait for forecasts to cycle through. And weather in Puget Sound can be pretty tricky. There are 3 forecast areas in the south part of the sound, and they can have and they're pink, green, and blue, and they can have quite different forecasts. We heed them all, especially weather warnings. When we anchor near the borders of these areas, we assume we'll get hit by the worst forecast, and so far it's worked pretty well.
Okay, now we're heading south in Colville's Passage towards Gig Harbor. It's August, and of course there's fog, but we find, it's no problem if we stay close to the shore. You can see it. And depending on what you feel like doing, there are a few great anchorages in this part of the sound. Well, they're not anchorages all. Marinas, yeah. So one of them is Gig Harbor. We really like it there. And it was a relief to see the fog starting to lift as a lot of other vessels started to appear on the AIS and radar as we approached the entrance to Gig Harbor.
And this is the entrance to the harbor. It's a great all-weather anchorage. And it's so well hidden that apparently European explorers went up and down Puget Sound for many years before stumbling upon it. With good anchorage, secure marinas, a harbor museum, several microbreweries, an array of ethnic restaurants, bakeries, and cafes, it's a great place to spend 2 or 3 days. And it can be a busy place on long weekends with lots of boats on short scope, but the holding there is good. The public pier has a dinghy dock for access to shore.
Then we cross over to visit the Thea Foss waterway down there at the bottom, which is actually in downtown Tacoma. There's no anchoring there, but there are lots of places to tie up. I found that Tacoma was really a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Here we are at the Seaport Museum Float in Tacoma, one of several docks there offering transient moorage. We were surprised at how few boats we saw here, even in the middle of the summer.
You were all up in Desolation Sound. Okay, this is you.
This is me. At Esplanade runs the length of the waterfront with restaurants, about 6 museums, and this herb garden planted by liveaboards at the Foss Harbor Marina. And this glass museum is one of the city's big attractions. Apparently it's famous. It was hard to resist this Kodak moment with a full moon and Mount Rainier. You will notice, if you haven't by now, that Mount Rainier appears in a lot of our photographs.
So to the west, towards Point Defiance, is Old Town Dock, which offers free daytime moorage and a popular seafood diner. And there's lots of other shops and restaurants that stretch about a mile or so north. And a couple of miles away is Point Defiance Park, which has 2 marinas and a park with some lovely hiking. And a zoo and aquarium. And also some lovely gardens, beach walks.
And moving on through Tacoma Narrows and into what is known as the South Sound. This is Cutts Island off Kopachuk State Park. There are park mooring buoys here. You can walk the island and explore the area by dinghy or kayak. and it's warm enough to swim. It's one of our favorite anchorages in this area of the Sound. Lynn and I grew up on the lakes of northwestern Ontario. Our parents had cottages there. The South Sound reminds me of the lake country. Cottages lining the shore, small power boats out front. Often, though not when I took this photo, the beach here is thick with teenagers on paddle boards or jet skis, bikinis, and boys doing their best to impress. Today, the long split was thick only with seals. They're protected, so you have to keep your distance. It's a short but pretty walk around the island with clay cliffs and sand beaches. That's us on the mooring ball. For many visiting boaters, the real attraction is not seals, it's not teenagers, and it's not swimming.
It's the nearby Island View Public House, tucked up a tidal creek bed just a short paddle away from Cuts Island. And I thought this table that looked like a dock was kind of fun with the cleats to hang your purse from. A thoroughly pleasant afternoon is had relaxing on the deck with locals. And that bay that you see in the background there is also a splendid anchorage that we have used in the past.
And nearby is Penrose Point State Park with mooring buoys and some lovely walks. And the shoreline here is really pretty. And this is your view if you take a mooring ball off the East Beach. Out right here in the background. In season, it's a busy place for shellfish harvesting. And no matter where you're from, don't eat the seaweed.
And moving deeper into the Sound is Felucci Bay with the Long Branch Marina, which is a favorite with cruisers. Pushing on, we reach the western half of the South Sound. This is McMicken Island State Park in Case Inlet, another lovely sand spit. It's calm and a really lovely spot to dinghy your kayak around. And you'll definitely feel more secluded here than you do in other parts of Puget Sound, like Gerald Cove.
Gerald Cove on Harstein Island, it's a popular spot. The tiny cove has about a dozen mooring balls and 2 park docks that mostly fill up every evening in the summer. This is one of the 2 docks. We played horseshoes at the campground nearby and walked the park trails and had hot showers. And it was calm, so I was able to add yet 7 more steps. Other stops in the South Sound include Tommy State Park with miles of trails and a massive drying shore, and Vaughan Bay, which has great protection from sand spit, which can only be entered at higher water. And there's also Stretch Point, a marine park with mooring buoys and a lovely small marina nearby.
And this is Woodward Bay Conservation Area, which is a 600-acre bird and wildlife refuge. There's 5 miles of mostly undeveloped shoreline and a large colony of bats that reside in that old railroad pier that you see there. So there's a lot of walkable shore, which, there's not a lot of that in the Broughtons. Okay, let's move south to Olympia, the capital of Washington, which is at the very bottom of this map. This chartlet shows the layout. There's the West Bay and the East Bay divided by a small peninsula, and it's all walking distance.
This is the Port Plaza dock in the West Bay. It's sometimes reserved for larger groups, but as you can see, we had our choice of where to tie up. We're behind the same ship that we shared dock space with in Tacoma. A block away is the farmer's market, open 6 days a week. Locally sourced meats, cheeses, bread, everything. It's a great place to stock up. And then stroll the West Bay waterfront.
Which has a dot of statues.
Lots. with restaurants and shops along the way.
Here's a view looking up West Bay on a stormy day. And this is Swantown Marina in East Bay. A big marina, very clean and well kept. That's where you have to go to do your laundry. And these are the transient docks. So there you are in the middle of August. As you can see, there's lots of room for visitors because they're all in Desolation Sound.
This is the state capitol building. You can walk up the hill to. And once there, this is the view you see back to the harbor and West Bay beyond.
So leaving Olympia, not far away is Hope Island, a marine park with mooring balls and miles of walking trails. It's really lovely. And it's known to be a good place for harvesting shellfish in season. So there you can see Hope Island near the center of the map. It's also quite close to the entrance to Hammersley Inlet. So at the end of the inlet is Shelton, which is the farthest west that you can venture in the South Sound.
If you have the time and feel like exploring, Hammersley Inlet is a cool detour. It's narrow, 7-mile channel, best taken with the flow, which can reach 5 knots. Anyone with experience reading charts should have no problem, though we almost went aground paying more attention to the view than maybe we should have. It's an interesting cruise with stylish homes along both shores and the tidal flats busy with oyster farming, as you can see here. We anchored off the port of Shelton Marina at the head of the inlet. It now belongs to the Shelton Yacht Club. I know.
Okay, well, don't worry about it.
Mixed up.
You just keep going here.
Yeah. Shelton is a small town where lumber is king. It calls itself the Christmas tree capital of the U.S. There's a secondhand shop, a few restaurants, a Safeway. It was hot when we were here, so as a highlight, Lynn took a time out at the local Dairy Queen.
Somehow we got off track here. Okay. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about ice cream. Another treat that's not available in Desolation Sound, I might add. But this is interesting. We contact marinas every year to update our guides and ask if there's anything that they want to add to the information in their listing. And the number one thing that they ask us to add, if there's space, is that they sell ice cream.
Anyway, we mentioned that the South Sound reminds us of Northwestern Ontario. A mill town like Shelton would fit right in.
On the way out the next morning, on the ebb tide, we proceeded quickly back out the inlet until this thick fog started rolling up the inlet towards us. So we just dropped the anchor for a while and waited for it to lift. Okay, so now we'll jump back north of Seattle to Whidbey Island. Rather than turning west and going to up Admiralty Inlet, we'll turn easterly into Possession Sound for a stop at Everett. This is a stock photo of the Everett Harbor. The bottom 2/3 of the photo is the Navy Yards, and just above that, off the channel, is the largest public marina on the west coast of the United States, which is protected by that skinny little wisp of sand that you see, which is known as Jetty Island.
The channel past Everett Marina is actually the mouth of a river. It looks peaceful, but it can be a real challenge to tie up when the tidal current nears peak flow. There are slips for more than 2,000 boats, with restaurants, a distillery, convenience store, and 2 chandleries.
And look, we're like the only people there. So there's lots of traffic in that channel. We were there during a fishing derby, and it was just a constant stream of boats coming and going throughout the day. And it's breezy there most afternoons. So it's a favorite place for windsurfing, kiteboarding, and parasailing.
And not far away is Holmes Harbor. There's a public dock there at Freeland with provisioning and other services in the town a short walk away.
So moving north is Oak Harbor, a great anchorage and a friendly marina. The only thing is the base there where the fighter pilots are trained is not too far away, and the growl of jets taking off and landing can be pretty intrusive.
And was a great place to finally finish off those steps, able to get to the top of the mast.
That was a good project.
This is, oh, sorry.
So this is Deception Pass. So this is your one way out of Puget Sound. It's narrow and really fast flows, so you definitely want to take that one at slack tide, as just about everyone else does. So yeah, it can be busy.
An alternate route is north through Swinoma's Channel toward La Conner and eventually Anacortes. You just have to time it to go with the flow. And timing the current can be tricky, but that's part of the fun. Transiting the channel requires some care, though most of the way, deep draft boats should have no problem as long as they stay in the middle. And anchoring is not permitted in La Conner, but there's lots of transient space at the marina and several town docks. It's a nice town to visit for a day or two with museums, galleries, vineyards for wine tasting, and it has a good sized marina for provisioning.
Oh, grocery store.
Grocery store. Marina for grocery store for provisions, yeah.
Okay, so heading north, once past the swinging railroad bridge that is usually open unless a train is expected, you just have to follow the navigation buoys to the waters around Anacortes. And finally, arriving in Anacortes, there are both anchorage and marina options, as well as chandleries and marine services, although the anchoring options are in good weather only.
And that's our look at Puget Sound. For us, the hardest part was deciding what to include in the short talk, but we hope we gave you an idea of what a pleasant cruising holiday Puget Sound can be.
Hopefully, it won't be too long before we can cross the border again and experience the delights of cruising in Puget Sound and taking advantage of all that it has to offer. So yeah, thank you to all of you for watching. And before we take some questions, I just want to mention that tomorrow we're doing a presentation on cruising the west coast of Vancouver Island, and that our new guide to that coast is now available and included in part of our package deals that we have for buying the guides. So yeah, that's it. And
Question.
yeah, any questions?
All right. Yes, we do have several questions here lined up for us. We have Shelley Harris asking, oh, so curious, what lakes did you grow up in Northwest Ontario?
Lake of the Woods.
And I spent time in Menaki, our family.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And we have Lindsay Babineau asking, what is the total distance from north to south end of the sound?
It's about 100 miles as the crow flies.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we have Doug England asking, how much sailing did you do in Puget Sound?
Actually, quite a bit. We were surprised. Like, there's not very much sailing often, like in the Gulf Islands and so forth. But we had great sailing up and down. At least our last time. The first time I was there, not so great. But the last time we were there, it was wonderful sailing.
Especially in the main sound, like up Hammersley Inlet or whatever. Not in the South Sound.
Yeah,
not so much.
It's like a river, but yeah.
All right. Okay, so now we have Shelley Harris asking, thank you. I thought it might have been Kenora and our beautiful Lake of the Woods. Well, she was right on there.
She was.
Right. And Shelley's following up with, did you experience a lot of commercial or freighter traffic?
Oh, after Seattle, there's nothing like that. No, nothing at all. Occasionally fishing boat, but that's it.
There were a lot of ferries. That's one thing. You have to kind of watch out for ferry traffic.
All right. And yes, Shelley also says, great information. Thank you. Just waiting for COVID to lift.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Now we have Doug England when in freshwater areas, what are the rules for gray water disposal?
In
So when we were in the lakes,
freshwater, I think it's.
Don't remember seeing
gray-
anything.
grays. I think it's all, it just goes overboard.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't remember
yeah.
that. I don't remember
Yeah.
seeing anything specific about that.
Yeah.
That's a good question though, but I think it's okay.
Okay, Shelley says, Lynn, you look familiar.
We both kind of grew up in Winnipeg, so I don't know if you're. Are you from Winnipeg, Shelley?
Oh, Shelley, if you raise your hand, we can open your audio for a moment. Okay, here she comes. All right, Shelley, go ahead.
Hi, you guys. A great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Both my husband and I grew up on Lake of the Woods in Kenora. We haven't been there. We still have a family cottage there. But one of the things I was so curious, and you really do look familiar, is making that transition from the freshwater lakes into the ocean. The type of challenges. And one of the things I know we've experienced is weather. And it's one of the reasons we like to watch these presentations is to get a feel for the differences in things like the locks and things like the tides and more risk around fog and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were plunged into it because we lived in Thailand for a while. Like hadn't really done very much sailing at all in the ocean, and we had sailed in freshwater, but then we ended up in Thailand and bought a boat there, and so really were plunged into ocean sailing and ended up sailing at home. So we don't really have.
It's definitely a lot different than sailing in the lake.
Yeah.
But I think it's you just take it with what you can handle. You gradually ease into things, and lots of seminars like this are great.
Yeah.
All right, and now we have Shane Myers asking, are most of the places dog friendly? And he says, great seminar.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of the shore is not accessible.
Yeah, the difficulty with a lot of in the States, or in Washington generally, is much of the shore is the foreshore is private, whereas in Canada it's generally public up to the tide line. So you really have to plan ahead if you're going to go into areas where you might have difficulty, or it's mostly residential land, might have difficulty finding a place to bring a pet ashore.
But there are lots of state parks. They're all
yes.
there's I would say a state park within a few hours, no matter where you are. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And as long as you plan in the morning for where you want to go and where you want to stop, depending on how many times you have to stop, I don't think you really would have any difficulty.
Okay, we have Randy Singer saying, how necessary are reservations at Puget Sound marinas for transient moorage during the summer months?
Well, we had no problem.
No. Never would turn.
I do think a lot of people do leave the Sound and go north to the Gulf Islands or San Juans or Broughtons. So from what I've heard and just seen on social media, last year it was crazy busy with people who live in Puget Sound and the San Juans going south. And apparently it was very difficult to get mooring balls and transient space.
Yeah.
But I think in a normal year, I don't think it's a problem.
Okay, now we have Lindsay Babineau asking, what is the US website for weather forecasts in that area?
I can look for that while... Oh, don't jump
Oh,
on.
goodness, no.
Okay.
We can take another question while I can take a question while Jim looks for that.
Sure, and if necessary, we can make that follow-up also. So Lindsay could contact you by email. It's in the chat box, Lindsay. You'll see the email address there. And we have Shelly Harris saying she's from Kenora. I think we covered that already. And Craig Douglas is saying, what is the general cost to stay in a marina? Is it easy to find? I think that was specifically pertaining to a particular slide you were talking about when the question came in. So, Craig, if you raise your hand, we could get some clarification from you if necessary.
Well, I'll put in a plug for our guides here. We include marina rates in our guides because they are e-guides and we can update them constantly. So that's something that we can have that paper guides really can't have. So the marina rates for virtually all the marinas and the park docks, the mooring buoys, all that is in our guide, if that's helpful. But I don't remember the costs being,
I think with the exchange, they're probably very similar.
I would say so
They
too.
seem
I
to
think,
be a bit lower, but you do the
yeah,
exchange. and
I'd say
about
it's
the
pretty
same.
similar. Yeah.
Okay, and we have Doug England saying, what is the typical cost of moorage?
Oh, man. We hardly stay at
Yeah,
marinas.
$1.25 per foot, probably.
Yeah, maybe $1.25 a foot.
Okay. Suki Spilner is asking, is there a boat size limit for the mooring balls?
Yes, it was 45 feet.
And some of them were even smaller, I think, had smaller limits, didn't they?
Yeah, that was generally if there was a choice between two or three mooring balls. 2 or 3 types of mooring balls.
Okay. Lindsay is following up. If not readily available, I am happy to buy one of your publications. Great presentation.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks.
And Mike Gregory is asking, how do we get your guides?
They're online.
So they're online. Yeah, if you go to the website, there's a free sample that you can download and play around with. And then to buy it, yeah, you just go to the website and the guides are sold individually for about $17 a guide, or you can buy the full package of 7 guides, so including the west coast of Vancouver Island now, for $54.99. For the package, it's
The package also
$59. And then if you buy your first package, any subsequent packages that you buy down the road you're considered a supporter at that point, and you get them for just $25. So supporter price is less than half price, and so you can update them every year for just $25.
Okay, and that answers Anne Percival's question on how much the guides cost. We have a few more questions here in the chat box. Let me see. Best time of the year to cruise here?
Oh boy.
July, August.
September was lovely because there weren't that many boats. I think it was getting close to September when we were further south in the Sound, at like McMicken and Penrose, and there weren't that many boats there. So September was lovely. I can't remember the year we went down in the spring. Can't remember what it was like. But it's pretty warm and dry, and the further south you go into the Sound, the less wind there is, and the less sort of effect from the chill in the air from the Strait of Juan de Fuca. There's more fog in August. But yeah, it's pretty sheltered in there, so weather isn't too big a factor, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah. It can be busy on long weekends, that's for sure. Blake Island on a long weekend, you're probably not going to get a mooring ball.
And we have a question from Sharif Fahmy asking, to cross the border with the boat, is there a checkpoint?
Oh yes, there's quite a few custom stocks throughout. Like there's Roche Harbor, and Friday Harbor in the San Juan Islands. There's also at near
Port Angeles.
Port Angeles and Port
Yeah,
Townsend.
Port Townsend.
Anacortes.
They don't, I don't think we've ever had them come on our boat and inspect anything, like looking for limes or,
Yeah.
or any questions about liquor or anything like that going down.
Yeah.
Coming back, they'll sometimes ask you if you've got anything to declare. But yeah, I mean, we've done it a lot, and we've never been, questioned with any depth or searched or anything like that.
No, it's really quite easy.
All right, and let me see, we have one more. Is there a specific checkpoint when we cross the border with a boat from Vancouver to US?
So in particular,
Well, there's that Point Roberts
yes.
is
That's easy. That's very convenient. That's just south of Vancouver. You can check in there easy, and it's access is quite easy. Yeah, Point Roberts Marina.
we do have that website to download the weather app.
Might be easier if we posted
We
it somewhere.
we can maybe put it in that chat box.
Yes, is that on your SailishSeaPilot.com website?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, we just type it in.
I'll type it in here, yeah.
Okay.
And I can answer.
Do I
While she's
just
doing
have
that.
to put in all that?
No.
Just that?
All right. I just want to point out, Roger Brett has kindly notified us that there is a typing error in this seminar's page, and it says that the URL at the bottom of the page is misspelled. So I'll just paste that in here.
Where is it? Sorry?
It's at the bottom of your seminar page. So I'm just going to type that in here just to show what the difference is. So it says Sailish, like sailboat, instead of SAL, just like I've typed in the chat box here.
Oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see who we can contact about changing that, because I think I think the boat show input that, but we'll take a look at that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'll be sure to let the organizers know, and hopefully we can get that changed as soon as possible. All right. Oh, we do have more questions coming in. Let's see here. Had a wonderful time cruising a couple of years ago, says Rand Lutman. Easy cruising area.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a great holiday.
Yeah, there's not too many challenges.
All right. Well, and that brings us to the end of this session. I'd like to thank Lynn Picard and Jim Burgoyne very much for this wonderful presentation. It was very engaging, excellent imagery. So this was Cruising Puget Sound, worth waiting for. Thank you so much. And everybody who attended, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. And please be sure to check out all the features we have at VIBS. And I wish you a wonderful day at the boat show.
Thank you very much, Bobby, for a good hosting job.